Let's jump right into today's explainer. We're tackling what I like to call the community myth, which basically boils down to one massive looming question. Will you lose your friends when you move?
Okay, let's dive into this. If you're like a lot of homeowners over 50, let's call you Michelle for a second, you might be absolutely terrified that a move is going to just erase your community entirely. Michelle knows her current house is way too big. The maintenance is getting to be a real chore, and logically, a move is the right next step. But she's paralyzed. Why? Because the fear of leaving behind that corner store where everyone knows her name, or the neighbors she's waved to for literally decades, is incredibly heavy. And, it makes complete sense on the surface. But when we actually look at the data behind this fear, we discover something really surprising. The idea that a community can't survive a move or be rebuilt somewhere new is fundamentally untrue. Community isn't just an address. It's people, routines, and shared experiences. To really understand why this myth falls apart, we need to completely reframe how we define community. Think about it. It was never actually just about a physical address, right? It isn't the bricks, it's not the street sign. It's the people, the routines, the shared experiences that built those relationships over time. And the really beautiful thing here is that all three of those elements can absolutely travel right along with you. Homeowners who've already made the leap rarely say they lost their community permanently. Instead, they describe a totally normal adjustment period, followed by a new routine that eventually feels just as natural as the old one. These new versions of community form way faster than you'd expect.
What's really interesting about this slide is how we can separate this anxiety into two distinct fears that usually get all tangled up together. On one side, you've got fear one, losing specific people you love, and on the other, fear two, never feeling connected anywhere again. Now that first fear, it's highly manageable. Honestly, it can be solved with a standing calendar appointment, a regular Sunday phone call, or a scheduled lunch date. The second fear, though, that's the one that does the most damage. It's what keeps people stuck in homes that just don't serve them anymore. But, and this is crucial, it's also the fear that the research speaks to most directly, proving it completely wrong.
1 year. Just 1 year. That is a seriously powerful number. To put that into perspective, a peer-reviewed study published in BMC Geriatrics looked specifically at older adults who joined a community group after a major life event, like moving to a new house. And the researchers found that within just one single year, these new members saw a massive reduction in loneliness. We're not talking about a decade-long grueling process here. Within 12 months, participants specifically pointed to moving as the life event that made new group connections so incredibly valuable to them. So instead of moving being this isolating thing, it's very often the exact catalyst that motivates people to get out there and build new, meaningful connections. Looking at before the move versus after the move, the study revealed something completely counterintuitive. For a lot of the participants, isolation had actually started before they moved, right while they were still sitting in their old, familiar houses. A shrinking social world had already begun right where they were. The move itself wasn't the cause of their isolation. Actually, scratch that. It was the exact opposite. It was the turning point that opened the door to a much richer social life. Moving doesn't slam a door on community. Frequently, it forces you to step outside and open an entirely new one.
So why do new communities form so much faster? Well, I looked into the research from 55places.com, and the answers make total sense. Older adults consistently report that making friends gets a whole lot easier once they move into a community built around shared activities. First off, downsizing physically changes your daily routine. It frees up hours and hours that used to be sucked up by exhausting home maintenance. And those recovered hours, they are exactly what new friendships need to grow. Second, new neighborhoods often have built-in gathering spaces. Compare that to a long-time neighborhood where your routine's calcified, like decades ago. In a new setting, the whole environment is literally designed to encourage casual, repeated contact. And this brilliantly illustrates what the AARP guide says about making friends after 50. They point out that frequency is the real secret ingredient here. To quote them directly, simply showing up in the same place again and again tends to be one of the most reliable paths to real friendship. It could be a walking group, a continuing education class, or literally just grabbing a coffee at the same spot every Tuesday. While it definitely takes a bit more intention at this stage of life than it did when you were 25 and living in a dorm, a new neighborhood with those built-in gathering spaces naturally speeds up that frequency process. And hey, the great news is that rebuilding your community doesn't have to be a solo mission. There are 3 key steps here. Transition smoothly with a pro, get connected to local resources, and build a social life from day one. Professionals like senior and specialty move managers do way more than just pack boxes. They're actually designed to help older adults transition holistically into new homes.
A big part of their job is connecting new residents with local resources, activities, and groups right out of the gate. This means the social side of your move gets structured support immediately, rather than just being left to chance. Having a pro point you toward the right walking group can shortcut months of awkward uncertainty into just a few confident, highly effective first steps.
Now, let's talk about the surprising joys. Things like a shorter walk to a neighbor's door or smaller buildings with shared spaces. People frequently discover they absolutely love these aspects of a new, smaller home. Community often shows up in ways you'd never anticipate. A shorter walk to a neighbor's front door tends to matter a whole lot more than you'd expect. So does having a simple community room that hosts a weekly card game that can suddenly become the absolute highlight of your week. And remember, none of this means your old community stops mattering. Your long-standing friendships are going to survive just fine through phone calls and visits. What changes is that a beautiful, brand new set of relationships gets added to your life. A neighbor waving every morning quietly rebuilds that daily sense of belonging. Community grows wherever you just keep showing up.
So is your current home preserving your community, or is it simply familiar? I really want to pause here for a second, because this is the real question worth asking yourself today. If the fear of losing your community is the main thing holding you back from a much-needed move, ask yourself that question honestly. Because those two things are not always the same, and the difference between preserving community and just leaning on familiarity matters way more than most people realize, until they've actually taken the leap.
So the crucial point is understanding the profound difference between familiarity and connection. A familiar house can quietly host a shrinking social circle without anyone really noticing. As neighbors move away, as friends pass on, or as health limits how often people can actually get together, the house stays exactly the same. It feels safe, right? But familiarity is absolutely not the same thing as active connection and shared experiences. Confusing these two is exactly how the community myth stays alive. The house stays the same, sure, but the neighborhood around it keeps changing whether anyone moves or not.
As you start exploring this, I highly encourage you to check out our free resource library and the Homeowners 50 Plus page. We've got practical guides covering basically every single aspect of later life housing, from downsizing and aging in place to senior living options. It really has everything you need to make confident, informed decisions without feeling any pressure at all. It's the perfect place to start getting grounded in what your actual options are. I want to leave you with this final thought straight from the research. Sometimes the most connected version of your life is still ahead of you. It isn't permanently locked behind you in a house you've simply grown used to. The myth tells you to stay put, but the research and the lived experience of countless homeowners says something far more hopeful. So if the data shows that your deepest, most active connections might actually be waiting for you out there, what is truly holding you back from stepping into your next best chapter? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this helps you move forward with confidence.